Hello and welcome to Past Your Bedtime. My name's Bev. Before embarking on this journey to explore agriculture and its people, I had no more than a token interest in the effects of climate change. I've always been obsessed by the weather forecasts in the short term. Well, I'm British after all. But I had no reason to consider the bigger picture beyond the headlines. On today's show, my guest is David Hoyles, a fifth-generation farmer from Lincolnshire, whose farm is situated a mile from the Wash and 2 metres below sea level on reclaimed silt. It's a soil type that allows him to grow a vast number of crops, and in 2019, noticing how each year more extreme weather events were shifting the goalposts and looking to find a crop that might thrive in the warmer temperatures, he landed on the idea of growing olives. Today, following the farm's first harvest from the world's most northerly olive grove, David joined me to talk about the history of the farm and the innovation that will take the Hoyles family farm into its next era. Like his soil, the conversation is rich with detail, and it's clear that David loves to share his experience. Check out the web links in the show notes for more information, and join me now as I kick off by asking him to tell me more. Why don't we start by you telling me a little bit about the background to the farm? You are fifth generation?
Yeah, I'm a fifth generation on this farm, but we've been farming for a couple more generations prior to that. So we're fifth generation on this farm. We moved a very long way from about 6 or 7 miles away a couple hundred years ago. So yeah, we're long-time farmers in the area. Started farming sort of mid 1700s and haven't really moved far, all on the reclaimed fertile, rich, natural fertile silt soils around the Wash. Mm-hmm. So the Dutch reclaimed the land late 1600s, early 1700s. Then it was grazed for a while as the salinity levels decreased. And then after grass for a while, then you've got livestock adding nutrition. Then other crops are started to be able to grow. And yeah, we as a family just been doing that for a few generations. And so I can remember my grandfather farming the farms and expanding a bit. Then in the 80s and 90s, farming was quite tough. We had the older members of the community who be able to remember things like we had butter mountains, sugar mountains, milk reservoirs and stuff like this.
My very first job when I left school in 1985 was for the Intervention Board for Agricultural Produce, part of MAF, processing those payments. So I understand completely that time period.
So that was pretty tough. So that was about battening down the hatches, not really expanding. It was a bit doom and gloom. Then basic payments came in and subsidies, European subsidies. That was probably helpful at the time, but actually probably a hindrance in terms of the medium term, long term, because it meant that people relied on those to keep going rather than innovating and the harsh reality of weeding out the poorer performers and the better ones succeeding. So it sort of dragged that on a bit. So stagnated a bit then, and that's when my sort of father and uncle took over. Then we were a mixed farm at that point. Then we had we personally didn't have it, but foot to mouth came into the country. Livestock was pretty hard work, and then we then started dealing with the supermarkets, sort of early 2000s. I came back. I had a sort of supermarket fresh produce background, having been away at working for other businesses. And then when I was early 30s, I came back to the family farm and helped to run it, and then sort of took it over a few years after that. And my father and uncle are the two main landowners, and so the business rents land from them, and then we also rent a bit more land in as well. So 2/3 is family owned, a third is rented in as a tenant. And I run that business, and then more recently we tried to be more sophisticated, more attention to detail, higher markets, gone down because we live on the farm and we own most of the farmland that we're farming. Tried to do it sustainably, environmentally, because we live here and we actually want a nice place to live.
Yeah.
And so then that sort of got us involved with Marks and Spencers and Waitrose and leaf mark farming, linking environment and farming. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of helped drive our business. We've had to invest a lot to make sure we deliver what we say we're going to deliver on contracts. But in times where it's needed, then that's been worthwhile investments in terms of precision agriculture, investing in variable rate seeding, variable rates, crop protection, placement of fertilizers, GPS driven drone mapping, NDVI, green area index scanning. So we're doing all that type of stuff. And then infrastructure wise, we've invested quite heavily in the last 15 years in cold storage and renewable energy. Cold storage and renewable energy go pretty much hand in hand, quite energy hungry. So we have our own power. So we put up solar. Our first lot of solar went up in 2011. So early adopters of that. We feed in tariff incentives. And then in 2014, we put up our own wind turbine. And then since then, we put up a couple more bits of solar as well. And then when we started seeing the climate changing, we were disappointing our customers and consumers a bit by not consistently delivering what we hoped to deliver. Then we've been investing in winter storage and irrigation. So we've now, in the last 8 years, so 2018, we built our first reservoir. And we've now got 3 reservoirs where we collect excess water, generally in the winter, store it in big reservoirs to then use it in the spring and summer to hopefully give the crops what they need to be able to then fulfill their potential and quality and yield wise. So that's the sort of journey we've been on. We've seen a massive change in the last 50, 70 years, probably 70 years actually, in terms of mechanization. So we used to employ over 100 people on our farm. The farm's doubled in size since then, but we now employ 6. So that just shows
is the scale of the operation.
So we farm about 700 hectares, so about 1,700 acres. So we're arable, but we don't farm all that ourselves. We rent some land out in rotation. We also rent some land in rotation. So we try and do a 1 in 8 crop rotation for most crops, apart from winter wheat, which is generally 1 in 4. And so that's, as we also learned at school in geography lessons and sometimes history lessons, the old rotation where you put different crops in the ground, different times, so that pests and diseases don't build up and the next crop wipes it clean. So using a natural way of cleansing the soil, growing different crops. We're very fortunate. Our soil type, we can pretty much grow whatever crop we'd like to. So we've got that luxury. The majority, we're on sort of grade 1 silt, easy working and suitable for vegetables, salads, combinable crops, all that. A lot of the UK land would not be suitable to that. So I'm very conscious that we are fortunate with where our family farm is based, and those options and those long rotations will be available to everyone.
Am I right in thinking that this last harvest, the highest yield was a Lincolnshire farm?
Has been certainly in a competition. So Tim Lammerman in North Lincolnshire, he's won a few awards. Tim and I used to spar each other for a decade, and then I stopped doing that probably 2 or 3 years ago. So we've won it once. He's won it probably 6 times, and we used to have the UK record. He's got the UK record. So he's on quite a different soil type actually to us, and he would have to put a lot more nutrition on his crops. So he's getting his from high water availability on chalky soils, whereas we're getting ours from naturally fertile. So if you did a gross margin report, what does it cost to produce per ton? If you're a business person, that would probably be the more interesting part that you want to invest in rather than maxing out and spend.
At all costs, But Lincolnshire, right, the breadbasket of the country.
Absolutely,
It's known as that.
Yeah, I think 60% of UK's food comes from Lincolnshire,
I used to travel there quite a bit. It smells of cabbages quite a lot.
It does at the moment. They're all getting a bit rotten. The ones that weren't harvested and the ones that have been harvested, and now it's too wet to do anything with the field. It is a bit stinky at the moment. But very fertile, very flat.
So you mentioned a minute ago about the climate change obviously impacting. When did you first feel that was a reality? Because as a lay person, the topic is sort of waxed and waned in terms of its interest to the non-farmer, but I don't think it's a debate anymore. It's a here and now, but the nuances of how you manage it, and obviously you're talking about things like irrigation, having your own reservoir. When did it first become such an issue that you needed to do things differently?
Last decade, really, in the 2010s to 2020s. 2011 was our driest ever year. We had that was drier than 2025. We had about half our annual rainfall, but crucially, a bit like 2025, we have very little during the growing crops period. And then 2 years later, we had extreme flooding and we had some crops rot out. And you think, oh, these events are happening slightly more. And then you look through, then 2018 was very wet. 2020, COVID was very dry. 2022 was very, very wet. 2024 was very, very wet. 25 was very, very dry. And you somehow, the frequency of these events, they're probably not changing, but the frequency is increasing. So we've always had wet periods. We've always had dry periods. I don't know what happened 200 or 300 years ago, but that's relatively irrelevant in my view, because the population is feeding differently now. The numbers of people involved, the people who are producing it are less. So there's more reliance on fewer people. So if you have a problem, it hits a lot harder. The grower and the customer and the consumer. So we live very short time scales these days. No one can afford very much stock. So if there's a problem, if you have quite a few days of problem, we have a massive problem. Whereas in the 70s and 80s, it didn't really happen like that. But we were eating different foods then, had different lifestyles, different cooking ways. So, so it was really 2010, 2020s where we noticed, and that's where we started investing in drainage to get rid of excess water. If you're doing drainage, then you really need irrigation to then put the water back on when you want it. We are being asked to store food for longer in cold stores, so energy hungry, so invest in renewable energy. And now this latest little diversification, which hopefully will become a bigger part of our business in the future, is more about trying to exploit some of those, but also to manage our profitability a bit better.
You talk about drainage, and I came across a term on the website. I think it was drain jetting.
Yep.
Could you explain what drain
jetting?
Yeah,
so we have underneath our land, about 1 meter deep, we have pipes which have little holes in them. So when you get excess water, the water goes through the soil profile, hits the pipe, and then the easiest way for the water to come out is to come through that pipe. And then they go into drains and dikes. And so sometimes as the water's coming through, our very fine silt particles can fall into that pipe as well with the water. Right. And so we basically, like a toilet brush, but it's a 600 meter long, it's a Dynarod is a famous company. So it's an agricultural version of that. So we stick a pipe, a nozzle down the pipe, which has a jet going forward, 7 jets coming back. It molds its way through that pipe and then just washes it out, so that when we do get heavy rain periods, then hopefully the water can come down that pipe as intended. So we try and drain jet all our fields once every 3 years. So underneath our fields, some of the older systems are 22 yards apart and the newer systems are 20 meters apart. So we'll have pipes going underneath the soil, flowing into dikes and root courses. So we're like now we've had heavy rain. So those pipes are now flowing lovely fresh water into a dike. That dike goes into a bigger drain, and then we're abstracting for an environmental license off that main drain and ironically pumping it back into a big, large lined reservoir to store it for later.
Yeah.
So that's what it is, cleaning the underground pipes, which allow the fields to become unsaturated. Because if we lose land being saturated or flooded, anaerobic conditions, the crops aren't going to grow there. And we've probably spent a lot of money on those crops. And so we want every hectare or every acre to produce a good, viable crop that's going to hopefully make a return on investment. So we need the soil to be doing what it's meant to do. But we get wetter periods and drier periods, hence why we invest in those two things.
Yeah, and it feels like everything, every step of the way, you'll have to think ahead, be completely on your toes in terms of what the next challenge from a climate point of view is, as to how you structure the farming operation going forward. And you talked about we would do things differently now. We eat differently. We've got a different infrastructure. So what are the considerations today? Because from the elements that you've rattled off, it sounds like
so obviously
you doing.
You can do as little or as much as you want. So it depends on what you want to achieve. So I'm trying to be a viable, profitable, sustainable farming business. So if I want to keep ahead of the game, I've got to be either an early adopter or a pioneer. and we've got to learn rapidly. We've got to be agile. We've got to change what we're doing because we'll often get it wrong, but we've got to be up there. And we're probably learning from the bigger players as well, but trying to make it affordable for our family scale size. So what else we've got to look at? Well, other massive costs are our labour. I've mentioned how we've mechanised, but the cost of machinery is now massive.
Yeah.
The government's offering grants for robotics, but I can't afford £1 million or £500,000 robot to come and try and do some stuff. If you're in a inside factory environment, a glasshouse environment, either picking strawberries or picking tomatoes or something, you can get robots to do it. Yeah, I appreciate that because they can work them all day and night. We're working outside in the open air with the UK weather. The robot scene isn't quite there yet, but that's where the government's trying to push us. But at the moment, we've got massive labour increases. Of course, we could go bigger machineries, then heavier, so it's not good for our soil, but also it's very, very expensive. So then you can't afford it. So we've got to be smart about what we're doing with our labour and our costs. So I actually think we've got to collaborate more. So I think we're going to probably become more specialised, and we'll probably grow less crops ourselves and work with other people closer. So we might then only actually grow 2 or 3 crops rather than 5 or 6 crops. So then we don't have to have so many people. We don't have to have so much machinery to do all those crops. And then we'll just swap in and out with other growers on our land. They come in for a specialist couple of crops on our fields. We go and do the same on theirs. So then we have less kit, but more bespoke kit for whatever crops we're going to do. So I think we're going to have to collaborate more. And we're probably going to have to do machinery sharing more as well. Rather than owning our own kit and having total flexibility, we're probably going to have to join in with our neighbour or some other like-minded local farmers because we can't afford the depreciation costs and the purchase costs of these new bits of kit. So that's probably the next challenge, and that's part of why we've set up our olive grove as we have. It's not a traditional olive layout. We've set it up for mechanical harvesting because labour costs are so high. So our trees are quite intense planting populations, and they're grown in long lines and will be trimmed into hedges, and then a mechanical harvester will drive over the top of the hedges to harvest the olives because you can't see they're struggling in the Mediterranean to get labour, and they've got a lot of local African labour that comes in to help, and they're still struggling with the old traditional lay a sheet on the floor, shake the tree or comb the tree. And they're struggling with that now. So there's no point in me starting a new business with headwinds already. So we're having to look where production's going and employ those technologies if we can.
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about the olive farm, the idea. When did it come about, and why olives?
So it originally came about through the challenges of the climate. So we were finding we're getting more frequent drier spells and also warmer spells. The drier spells we could mitigate through our investment in the reservoirs, which we had invested on the farm for our supermarket products, but we couldn't really do much about the warmer temperatures. So vineyards were very successful in the UK, but our soil types are not compatible. And it was just by chance while I was on a farming trip in Italy that I saw olives being grown right next door to veg on similar soil type to our own. So that got me thinking. I really enjoyed the Mediterranean lifestyle. I really enjoy eating olives, etc., etc. So I thought, let's have a few olive trees. And then Brexit came, and we had our own setup of phytosanitary rules to keep the island safe of plant health and diseases and stuff like that. Then you also had import levies coming in. So by inspection, if I was going to bring in a couple hundred trees just to plant near my house as a bit of a hobby, it was then going to be massively costly for all the other parts apart from the trees for getting them into the country. So I thought, well, let's go scale. So I asked how many trees fit on a lorry. They said 18,000. I said, well, let's have a lorry full. Then I realized that olive trees are quite expensive, and I thought I better do this seriously. So from 2022, I then started some serious research, spent a lot of time traveling, learning from the best in the industry around the Mediterranean. And then in 2023, decided on some varieties and went from there and planted those in spring 24, imported a tree planter, set up some trickle irrigation, some permanent little tape to put water and nutrition to the trees. So we were able to to tie that in with our farm infrastructure. So actually relatively low cost, because we already had the reservoir and the water there and the pumps. All I needed to do was just put in a new little pump house to be able to apply low pressure water. But yeah, very fortunate that the biggest cost, the land, was already available to us because I just planted it on family land. And
How
then
many
it just
trees did you end up buying?
So we bought the lorry load, 18,000.
And what sort of size are we talking about?
So they were, the spec of those was 30 to 40 centimeters tall. Yeah, so about just under a year old.
So this is a completely ignorant perspective here. I'm quite surprised at the rapid turnaround from planting a sapling to creating a harvest. I appreciate your volumes for your harvest were probably very small, but I somehow imagined that an olive tree needed to establish for a lot longer than a couple of years to get anything off of it.
Yeah, I was told that there would be 3 years that they would start flowering and producing olives, and that's exactly what they did. I was surprised that we did, but I think the very good weather or likable weather we had for olives wasn't quite so great for our other farm crops, but they really enjoyed the hot, warm spring and summer. And I think that probably helped us overachieve for the size and the age of the trees, because our trees are generally growing about half the rate of the Spanish and the Italian trees.
Right.
Because when ours grow from April through to October, November, when the temperature's high enough. Spain and Italy grow year round, but theirs particularly grow from November through to March, where it's their cooler time and they've got more moisture, more rainfall.
Right.
That's when ours don't do any growing because it's too cold.
Yeah.
So theirs are nearly doing we're doing half. They're growing year round and we're only growing for half the year. So I was told they would flower. I've been fairly pessimistic in my business plan. I was told they would flower and fruit after year 3, and they should hit maturity in 20 to 30 years. So in my simple head, if we were only going at half the rate, I thought they might be 3 or 4 years to the flower and 30 or 40 years till they hit maturity. It's going to take. We're going to be not as efficient and productive as the Mediterranean because our trees shut down for half the year.
Yeah.
So I was pleasantly surprised. And each year, as the trees get bigger, there's more branches, and so we'll then have more flowering sites, and hopefully we can turn those flowers into fruit. Then we'll have more fruit sites as well.
Yeah. I holidayed in Puglia once.
Oh, lovely. Yep.
And it was end of May, and I remember the most beautiful blossom coming off the trees at the time.
Tiny little olive blossoms. Yeah.
It was just magical, like fairy.
I'm actually going to Puglia on Wednesday.
Oh.
On an olive trip, and then I'm going to the Italian olive festival. So that's up in Milan. So I'm going to Puglia for a couple of days to see some growers who have been very, very kind and generous to me, and been over to me to help my olive grove. And I'm going back to see them and look around theirs and look at some new stuff they're doing. So yeah, no, it's a special place with special people.
Fantastic. Will you be filming it and putting anything out on your social media channels?
Well, I don't know about social media. It's me, so it's limited in its capability. But I, when my daughters were home over Christmas, then I was getting I was going to say training, probably more abuse about how to improve my skills and what I should and shouldn't be doing. But they are a different generation. But yeah, no, I'm slowly getting better. But yeah, I should get some content. I'll try and remember.
We were talking beforehand about the importance of reaching an audience for the first time in your career. This is a product where you actually got engagement with the end user, the consumer. And so social media is absolutely at the forefront of creating that visibility and that engagement for things. You must have noticed a change of that in the last few years.
Yeah, totally. And I, with my background in fresh produce marketing, before I came back to the family farm, I used to deal quite a lot with supermarkets, and we had consumer panels, and it was all about new product development and making sure the customer's happy, looking ahead what they want, and also keeping making sure the consumer was happy, but also keeping the customer happy. I didn't really have that much opportunity to do that on the farm with my little family farm, but what I was very keen to do was sort of open our farm up and bring in school children, students, politicians, show them what we're doing, because people were becoming disconnected with food and food production. So I thought that was one way that my little farm could help. So that's why we do a farm info sheet, just try and share what we're doing because we don't employ those 100 people anymore, I used to go home and talk about food production, and when we were doing what and how the food was produced and what's important, what isn't important. I felt that I should be doing a little bit more to sort of to push up those levels again to 100 people, so they know what we're doing, either in the local community or a bit further if people are interested.
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy face-to-face more than anything else. So when this project came, that didn't daunt me on the olive side, but it's the technology that's holding me back, and probably a good thing, because I just bore people every day with what's going on. But it means if I do a couple of posts a week, then hopefully I'm not disturbing people's lives too much, and sharing a bit of knowledge at the same time.
What I think is fascinating, it's a headline grabber to say that you have the most northerly commercial olive grove in the world.
Yeah, time will tell.
So you've invited people on farm, the school children, politicians, as you say. Have you participated in things like Open Farm Day, or have you any designs on making that something that the farm does on a regular basis from an educational point of view? Because you're doing all of this innovation, so a lot could learn from your experience.
Yes, we don't actually host the Open Farm Sunday weekend ourselves. That falls, unfortunately, or fortunately, with a couple of family birthdays. But I do go and help out there. We've got a couple of neighbours who do it. But what we do our own mini. So we open our farm up to the local community.
Yeah.
And do that. So yeah, on Open Farm Sunday specifically, then we go and help out. So myself and my farm manager, we'll go to local farms, and we'll either be on a trailer with a microphone talking to people, and that do a 20-minute round trip, and then get another trailer load on and do that. Or sometimes we're on a stand talking about fresh produce or whatever. But we do then have our own sort of specific open events where we just invite people over for a 2 or 3 hour sort of mini walk around the farm, and some refreshments. So we're normally doing the summer barbecue and a beer, we call it. Soft drinks available as well, and then people can then see what we're up to, and understand why there might be some lorries coming through the village, why there's some tractors coming through the village, why sometimes we have to harvest late at night, why other times they don't see us for a month at a time. And so it's just really to appease as our local community evolves as well, and the people who are in it. We used to employ a lot of them. We don't anymore. So it's we ought to be doing that. I believe that we ought to be doing it. So that's why we sort of do our engagement. And the politician thing, I'm not a political person, but I've often been asked, particularly 10 years ago when I was invited a lot to speak at farming events and in the farming press more, then you get a small profile in the industry, and then they sort of push you to talk to people. So on that side, I think, well, actually, if our local, we're right on Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, and Norfolk border. So we're actually some of the farms in East Midlands and some of the farms in East Anglia. And that also means that we have different government departments and also different politicians and different councils that we deal with. So I think I also just bring them together and invite them over and just tell them what we're up to, and they can then choose to see whether it's good, bad, indifferent, interesting or not. So we offer it, and I'd say remarkably, generally, everybody we invite generally comes. Or if they can't come, then someone from their business does come. So it goes down well. So I don't mind putting the effort in, and we try and tie it together. So we have university open days as well. So universities come, and so we're tied in. So if we've set the farm up, we'll put a lot of effort in. We'll get a lot of information sheets out. We'll do walks around with info up, machinery out, and then we can probably have 3 events in a week. So all that setting up is utilised and more productive. It means it's a busy time with lots of people, but it means we get a lot of people onto the farm, sharing the message, listening to what they've got to say as well. We learn more from listening these days than what we do rabbiting on ourselves. So yeah, I really enjoy that. And
like we were saying earlier, I think farmers do like to talk. They like to share their knowledge and experience. That their opportunities to do that are kind of limited by the day job, but anything where you can get them together and share knowledge.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I feel that most farmers are quite insular actually, and don't really like talking about what they do. And that's why I feel that, someone like you could be the conduit between what they do, great storytelling, to either go to a school or go to a politician or go to a food group. So or maybe we're just a bunch of miserable lonies in this area. I don't know, but
I wouldn't say that.
but yeah, I think we could all be better at talking.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's sort of, you don't want to be just, I use social media in a limited capacity. I don't want to fall back into the trap of my previous industry experience where you're just saying something for the sake of saying something.
Yeah.
Like your opinion is even interesting. But I have found it heartwarming that the minute I have engaged somebody in food production and farming, their eyes almost light up that they've actually found someone who's not going to glaze over at the boring bits, whatever, because I'm a complete sponge for the information at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's all new and interesting until it isn't. So
and you would have the skill to know which bits you could then pass on that listeners or readers would enjoy. And that's the bit that where us farmers, we need the training. I've been on quite a few media training courses in past roles and whatever, but we all could be better at the bits we do share and the bits we don't share. And but I think that's where you're.
I've never done any media trainings, so it's all. I just got a curiosity for it, and that's what started this whole thing. Really, you get to a certain point, well, as I had gotten to a certain point in my career, I just got bored of it, and I was doing a job where I'd been doing the same thing 20 years before. I was fortunately in a position where I could jack that in and then just turn my hand to something new. Don't know where that'll end up still at this point, and I'm 6 months in.
The exciting part, yeah.
Well, exciting or mad,
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. I think I'm cut out for it. So the olives, will there be any other interesting climate resistant crops that you're thinking about, or different ways in which to farm?
Not for me, Bev. No, this is a big project. We've done various other diversifications. I've mentioned renewable energy. I've mentioned water management. We've got a dog park as well, which sort of bore from demand over COVID time. That's doing very well. But this is a big project, and we can make this bigger if we want to by planting more trees. But we've also got a massive amount of learnings. It's not just about having trees and buying an olive press. There is a real science and a skill in producing olive oil, and it's not read a manual, turn this on, press that button. The temperature of the olives, the water content of the olives, the climate conditions of the prior 2 or 3 weeks before harvest, the variety, all these things change as to how long you chop them for, how long you stir them for, how long you centrifuge them for to spin the oil out. So I've got a lot of learning to do, and luckily the trees will have a slow growth up to maturity. So I can my learning can follow that curve. So we're not making disasters with massive amounts of crops. We can make disasters with small amounts of crops. Then the next year, hopefully, we make slightly less mistakes as the volume gets higher and higher. So we've got options there. And then as the trees grow and we get more olives and hopefully more olive oil, then that produces other needs in terms of marketing. So while the quantities are fairly small, and if we provide safe, good quality, interesting olive oil, very niche English olive oil, then hopefully demand will look after our supply. At some point, it'd be a really nice problem to have supply exceeding demand, and then we've got another job to do there. Who are we going to partner with? Where are we going to partner? So the obvious answer is down the foodie route with restaurants, chefs, hampers, farm shops. So there's work involved there. So this project, I won't see them hit maturity, these olive trees. So this is plenty.
This is your legacy.
Plenty of big enough projects to keep me busy. So I'm not going to be looking at anything else. But there'll always be fine tuning and tweaking on the main farm that's funded all this and given the opportunity to all this. But there won't be any more big ventures for us. But I know there's farmers up the road who are growing watermelons 10 miles from here. We're growing more exotic veg inside glass houses. There's a tea grower down in Cornwall. So there's a lot of work being done by pioneering people. But we'll perhaps look back in 20, 30 years time and think it isn't that pioneering. A bit like English wines. They've done a brilliant job. But some people 40, 50, actually it was 80s. So yeah, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
took the very, very bold step of doing it. And then everybody else has started to catch up with them. But those early pioneers, some of them that are still there, they are the market leaders. They are the ones who now offer either pressing services or agronomy services or planting services. So if the same happens with olives, we could become a cooperative for other people's olives, and we could press and bottle other people's. Or we could offer advice as to how to set up your olive grove, how to look after them. So yeah, there's plenty for us to chew on, and there's not going to be any more of these mad big ideas from my side, but there'll be plenty of opportunities, spin-off opportunities from it.
Enough to keep your plate full at the moment.
It's always busy here. Yeah, it's we're always doing something. If you look at our investment levels and look where we've either been early adopters or followers of the marketplace, then just the last 15 years of significant investments to try and make us continue to be good at what we're doing, our day jobs, producing food. Yeah, that's been quite large investments made.
Good luck with it. Or can I put my name down for a bottle at some point?
Yeah. What we always do is we ought to get a load of people around. Should we have? I'm thinking about we might even open up the olive grove in the future, and then people can come do an olive visit and tastings and stuff like that. Just have to make sure the weather's good. But we'll wait a couple of years till we make a few less mistakes and we've learned a bit more. But no, it's exciting times, but it's challenging but also rewarding.
Great, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I wish you every success. I will keep an eye on progress, and tell us how your trip goes as well. That would be lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bev. No worries.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Speak soon.
So there you have it. Lincolnshire's not all about stinky cabbages after all. Thanks to David for showing perhaps another side to the climate debate. I absolutely loved chatting to him, and it brought back some memories. I almost moved to Lincolnshire many years ago with plans to own a bit of land. I wanted to eventually create a market garden and step off the corporate treadmill. It wasn't to be, as it turned out. But chickens were also high on my list of priorities then, and in next week's episode you'll be hearing from a young couple who are doing exactly that, quitting London for the Hampshire countryside. We'll be talking about pasture-fed eggs, flock down, chicken poo, and I make an embarrassing confession. But that's all for today. If you enjoyed listening, please like, share, or leave me a review. Comments and questions are always welcome too, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like me to drop into your feed each week. And so if it is past your bedtime, perhaps it's time to turn in. Until next time.